All right, so picking up from where we left off last time. Last time we left off at what? Left off working through the 5 S's, right? We talked about the 5 whys. What is the 5 whys, essentially? Basically, it's asking yourself why 5 times to get to the root of the matter. So let's say you've got something that you have never used in your life, but you have it in your room. You have to sit there and ask yourself, why do I have this? Why did I buy this? What in the world was I thinking? Right? At some point, you sit there and go, do I actually really ever love and need this? What is the answer to that most of the time? I don't know about y'all, but for me, it's, I don't remember why I bought this. I don't need it, and I don't really want it. So it's time for it to go to donation land. Bye. We got the 5 S's. What are the 5 S's, guys? Sort. State's one of them, but it's sort, set, which is where, so what you're first going to do, you can kind of think about it this way, is like cleaning your garage. So you open the garage, there's a crud load of stuff staring you in the face, right? So what do you have to do first of all? You have to take everything out of the garage and you have to sort it. There are 3 piles you sort it into. What are they? Trash, keeps, and donate maybe. Don't know what you're going to do with it. Right? So then you look at the stuff that, this stuff's not trash, so maybe I just need to donate it. I don't need it. I don't want it. It's not staying. And then you look at your keep pile. Your keep pile has to then be what? You're setting it. You're setting it into place of this is important, this is not, this is where this needs to go, this is where this needs to go. That is set. What else? You have standardize. What does standardize mean? It means that once I create the system, I'm going to keep said system alive, right? You have shine. Shine is making sure everything stays clean and stays organized according to what you have set and what you have created as your standards. And finally is the hardest one of all, and that is sustain. How easy is it to get a garage full of crap? Very easy, right? All it takes is maybe a few months where you don't pay attention, you've done 500 projects in the garage, and the garage looks like what? It looks like crap. Basically, it looks like somebody had a bunch of garage sales, stuffed everything in your garage, and said, your problem. It takes nothing to get it that way, right? Literally nothing. 5 seconds of inattention lead to a whole bunch of problems with that area, right? It's just like any fitness plan or diet plan. It is so easy to sit there and say, these are the foods that are good for me, these are the foods that are bad. The bad foods are made to go away, and so everything is set, everything is great. Except after a couple of weeks, you start to what? Start to kind of lose interest in the diet, right? The junk food starts creeping back in, right? And it's really hard to sustain it. But the sustain is the key to it all, too. So it's the one you have to really work the hardest on. Does that make sense? Everybody on your cell phones? So sustain is the hardest. It's just like any plan or any habit, it is the hardest. The good habits are hard to keep. Bad habits are hard to break. Just how it is. So one of the things we have in our toolbox for lean is what is called poka-yoke, which in Japanese means mistake proofing or error proofing. So how many of y'all work in industry? So you've seen the jigs, right? You see jigs where this goes here, and it's set, you have hooks and things that'll set it in place while you do whatever you have to do. That's mistake proofing. Think whenever you're building a piece of furniture. They literally make it to where even the least smart person in the universe could put it together, right? They've made it that way for a lot of people. That is what is called mistake proofing. It's a way to make sure that no matter who is on the job that day, they quite literally cannot mess it up. Does that make sense? Okay. And that's the whole point of this, is to make it where you can't make the mistake. Because again, with Toyota, who started a lot of this, they're on an island where it's really expensive to get materials, right? There's not a lot of steel in Japan. There's a reason they and China have conquered each other several times. Japan is sometimes very short on resources on that, depending upon the resource. And that's just island living. So if you can mistake proof it, if you make sure that no matter what, anything that leaves your hands is about the most perfect it can be, it makes everything a lot easier. It makes it to where I don't end up like most car builders that have 5,000 cars sitting on the lot waiting to be fixed from some little thing somebody could have fixed at the very beginning, right? So a lot of automation has become creating jigs and creating cradles and things like that of parts, so that all you have to do is clamp parts together onto one jig and away you go, right? Quick, fast, easy. But at the same time, a trained monkey is able to put these things together, right? You want the trained circus monkey that can do it to have the easiest time of it. And no, I don't mean that y'all are trained circus monkeys. I mean that it's how simple can you make this to make it to where nobody can mess it up. As somebody that has seen automation in action, it's very easy for people to make mistakes. It's our nature as humans, right? That's why there's a phrase that says, I'm only human. We make mistakes. But if you can get the mistakes out of manufacturing, you A, end up with a better product, B, you can drive costs down, and C, the product you send to your customers is a lot less likely to be returned, which means your profit goes what? Your profits go up, word of mouth, right? For a while there have been several companies here lately where somebody makes a mistake, the product is crud, and so what do people start doing? Hey, you know, I bought that the other day, and it's not a good product. It fell apart on me in 3 minutes. Amazon reviews, right? Once it starts racking up those bad reviews, it's really hard to get off that wheel, right? And your company gets a bad name for it. Because what is the first thing people are going to check on any product they're looking at? You're going to check the reviews. Why? Because you want a better product as the consumer. So the manufacturer wants a better product to sell to the consumer, knowing that if they give you a dud, you're going to tell everybody around you, and they're going to lose business. The more business they lose, the more money they lose, the less of their product sells. It's a vicious cycle. If you've ever been in retail, you know what I'm talking about. It's a very vicious cycle. So it's one of those things. Poka-yoke has become the biggest focus of a lot of this, is so that you end up with that good product. Okay? So it's inspection at the source. It's inspection where you're at, rather than letting it get downstream and it's broken into a million pieces and everybody looks at you and goes, what happened? Everybody's looking at each other going, blame game, blame game, blame game. No, we don't want to play the blame game. We want to stop and inspect and keep it good at the place it's at, right? That is the purpose of mistake proofing. Okay? I told you all this the other day. Toyota employees, especially back when all this was being first developed, and even to today, they have the ability to stop the manufacturing line any point in time. Every employee has the ability to stop the manufacturing process. Why? Because they're inspecting something and they see a defect coming through, they can immediately halt it from production and say, hey, nah, this isn't right, this isn't good, we need to take this back and fix it now, stop production now, not 5,000 pieces down the line. They're the ones that started a lot of this. More and more companies have adopted this. Why? Because they figured it out. If you mistake proof at the source, if you allow your employees to say, whoa, no, this is a mistake, we don't need to have this in our system. You give your customer the better product. I'm trying to think who they actually ended up working with on Toyota, but I can't remember who it was. I think it was like one of the plants in Chicago. I think it was something like GM or someplace like that, that they were doing really badly, but Toyota came in and were able to flip the whole company around. This company was one where people were selling drugs to each other. They didn't care about their product. They went in, they did maybe a few cars, and then they went home. They were, I don't want to say they were lazy, but they were. And you can look this up, honest to God. In order to have Toyota build in America, they were told to go to this plant. And again, I don't know the specific name. I think it was GMC in Michigan, or Chicago, I think, and told, fix this. This plant has not been working for years. Everybody knows it. This is terrible. Go in and fix it. And in just a few years, I think in like 2 years, they turned the whole company around. They turned that whole manufacturing line around by doing things like Poka-yoke. Stop the line. Right? So, just in everyday life, how many of y'all actually have ever ironed your clothes? 2 of y'all? 3? So all of y'all have ironed your clothes. That's the great thing about an iron, is that they have automatic shutoffs these days. This is on any kind of iron. Why? Don't leave it on, burn your house down. That's a great reason not to have that on, right? I cannot tell you how many times my mom has left her curling brush on. Yes, hot iron curling brush, just so that she can mess with her hair. She's left it on 1,000 times. Drives all of us nuts because she would end up calling back to the house going, need you to check and see if this is on. I don't want to burn the house down. No, we really don't want to burn the house down. We really don't. Automatic sinks have become a big way to mistake proof because why? Especially in public. Jeez. How many times have you left a sink running? You might not think you do, but you do. That or somebody's got really nasty hands, and who really wants to touch a public tap after somebody's been in the potty? Yeah, think about that one for a minute. Ugh. Especially these days. Automatic toilets in public facilities. Great way to do that. Having worked in places that did not have automatic toilets, having people leave you presents is not pleasant. They tend to do what I like to call the poop and run. They tear up your toilet completely, and then they run out of there like their hair's on fire. So, yeah, having an automatic toilet is really nice in those kind of cases. Because having to be the person that goes in there and flushes it and cleans it is not pleasant. Coffee makers have been automated. Circuit breakers are an automated thing. We don't really have overwrite protection on most disks anymore. That doesn't exist. We don't use disks. But this is a really good example right here of mistake proofing. So what they have, I don't know how well y'all can see this, is that they've got different colors of wire. There we go. They've got different colors of wire. So what have they done to mistake proof this? Well, they said, okay, we're going to create a jig. And on this jig, we're going to have tabs to show where they need to be put. And that's where the screws go. We're going to have ways to identify which way is correct, so they can match the light up here. And then they match the colors of the wire to the jig. Simple, right? But something like that means that anybody can connect that, right? You don't have to be a brain surgeon to connect that. All you have to do is look at it and go, oh, yellow goes here, black goes here, green's here, red, black, purple, or blue, I guess is what that is, and then white and light blue. This is the whole purpose of mistake proofing. Make it to where anybody can do the job. Okay? So, what are some different ways we can eliminate waste? There's a lot of them. Okay? So, a lot of it tends to become simplification. What do I mean by that? Following the KISS principle is probably one of the biggest ones. Keep it stupid simple. Yes, I know that's not the way most people say it. It's the way I say it. Keep it stupid simple. Keep it to where nobody can make it bad. That's one way. Simplify how many tools you need. Make all the set you need standard. Instead of having 6 different heads to the screws, make it all Phillips head or flathead. Or all a hex key for all I care. Don't need to have 6 different hex keys. Just need one, right? L wrench is not. So other ways, we can always automate, but is automation always the key? No, because some jobs actually do need a human touch. Inspection is one of the biggest ones. Yes, you can use a camera to create inspection, but sometimes things happen in automation and the keys that are supposed to be there might have gotten broken off 3 steps back, but it'll flag whenever the inspection of it comes through. Another big one can be reorganizing departments. Maybe everybody's not working well together. Maybe we need to change around who's where and maybe shift everybody around to settle things out, right? So maybe make different staffing decisions. Let me put y'all this way. Or let me ask y'all a question first. About how long after you get hired on a job does it take to feel like you are completely proficient at your job? Yes, I really want y'all to seriously think about that for a second. Roughly a month? It takes you about a year plus, truly. At a month, you feel comfortable enough that you are able to be on your own and not feel like you need to go ask your boss a million and one questions. But at the same time, you typically are sometimes having to still go ask, right? 6 months to a year, you're not asking as many questions. You're fairly proficient. But to become the true expert at your job generally takes a year plus. And this is statistics, guys. Now, the biggest problem you have about staffing is you have to watch who you bring in. If you ever look at how much is spent on trying to educate employees and get them actually in the door, it's astronomical. It is truly ridiculous what they have to do to get people even halfway in the door. Truly, again, y'all can look this up. This is all statistical. So what you have to do as an HR person is be very careful who you bring in and make sure that they are the people you want. Because you have to bring somebody in to do safety training, right? Lock out, tag out, make sure you're using the tools correctly, all that kind of thing. You have to have somebody that is teaching them how, or a lot of jobs pay for safety glasses, prescription and regular. They'll do that right out of the gate, right? And there's still more jobs that will pay to buy your steel toes. Steel-toed boots. Why? Because they're trying to get you in the door as fast as possible. They don't want to see if you get steel toes in the next 2 months. They want you to have them then, and they will pay for you to have them. All that starts racking up money, right? And as you rack up that money, things start to become expensive per employee. So a lot of places tend to try and focus on retention of employees. So that would be an elimination of waste, right? Because generally, how many of the people that you go into a job with are actually there a year later? Maybe half or less. That's a lot of waste, isn't it? So there's a lot of waste to a lot of this, and it has to be something that is considered whenever you're trying to deal with all this. Okay? Biggest lean principle is to only produce what is pulled by the customer. What do we mean by that? Well, it means that you have to. How many of you go to the doctor or the dentist and get a survey 5 minutes after you leave the office? Seriously, y'all never check your emails and see that you have a survey? Please take our survey. Please, please take our survey. Believe you me, I get it all the time. Every time I go to the doctor or the dentist, they sit there and they go, please take this survey. No. Please take this survey. 5 days later, please take the survey. Huh? School's not nearly as bad as some of the people I've been to, believe you me. But all of that is just focusing on customer retention. And it's also to be able to say, what of our services did you use and what did you like or dislike about the services? Right? Because you don't want to produce, let's say you're going to the doctor, right? What's one of the biggest tests at the doctor is they'll do a blood test, right? Check to see, is your body working the way it needs to? Or they'll do a flu test. Now, do you want them doing a random flu test if you're not sick? No. Just like you don't want them to do any kind of random work without you being sick or you needing it done. So that is production done by customer request. That's being pulled, not being pushed. Pushed would be you walking into your doctor's office, they stick that cotton swab up your nose and say, no, you don't have the flu. I came in here for a health check. Why did you shove a swab up my nose when I'm only here for a health check? Right? That sound about right to y'all? Pushing is that. Pulling is, oh wow, you're really sick. You're showing signs of the flu. We will do a flu test to make sure if you have it or not. That's pull. Okay? Customers have to ask for it to occur. All right? So some way, somehow, the customer has to sit there and go, hey, I need you to do this. And one of the biggest things you always want to do to achieve anything is constantly try to strive for improvement. How many of y'all work out? What do y'all do with your workout routine? Do you just do the same workout routine every time? No, what do you strive for? You constantly want to improve, right? You want better health, better muscle tone, better something, right? Continuous improvement. You don't want to sit there and get on the wheel and not move. You want to keep running the track, not running the wheel. Y'all know what I mean? Not really. Okay, so how many of you have ever seen a hamster or a rat or a mouse on a wheel? They just sit there and go run. And they're running in place. They're not getting anywhere, right? Versus if you get to an outdoor track, you're getting somewhere, right? You're not running in place. That's continuous improvement. You don't want to run in place. You look for ways to change it up, mix it up, make it better. Now, does that mean that every improvement always works? No, heck no. Most improvements don't. That or most improvements don't get kept. It's up to you to make the change and to hold it to there until you figure out whether it'll work or not. So Kaizen, continuous improvement. So if you're, most places, if you're implementing Kaizen, you're looking for goals that can be specific, it can be measurable, attainable, relevant, and you have to kind of bind it up in time. Why do we want to make it time bound? We want to make it time bound because if you make it to where it's not, everybody sits there and tries to do what? What is the worst trait of humanity? Most people suffer from this, especially to do with homework. Procrastination. Thank you. If you don't time bind something, procrastination kicks you in the rear end. Every time. Okay? So, most of the time, it helps if results are publicly displayed, right? If you're at a job, that's one of the biggest ones. One of the biggest ones I can always think of is safety, right? What is at every job that is a manufacturing job? Somewhere, some way, you've got a board that says X amount of days since the last injury. Yeah? Huh? There's some place in almost every job where they say it's been X amount of days since the last injury. That's a public display to say, let's continue towards this goal. We're improving on the fact that nobody has been injured, right? That kind of takes you through several of these. Exercise mutual respect and working together. This is probably one of the hardest ones for a lot of people because a lot of people tend to get competitive, right? That, or we tend to start feeling contempt for our fellow employees because we sit there and go, I'm pulling all the work. This would be one of the biggest things, right? The whole point of any of this is to always try and pull together. You cannot make change without everybody being involved. And that is one of the hardest truths of anything you're having to do as far as making a change for better or worse. All right. One of the biggest things people have a hard time to deal with is keeping an open mind to change. Why? Because humans, as a species, hate to say it, we hate change, don't we? Something changes in your life. Does it throw you off? Oh, yeah. Most of the time, we tend to prefer to keep our life in step, right? Left foot, right foot, all the way down. And whenever you get any kind of a bump in the road that trips you up a little bit, it throws you off. But keeping an open mind and looking for ways to change is probably one of the biggest ways that you can improve anything. Okay? So I'm going to leave the rest of these because, like I said, just one of those you have to kind of, it's all about teamwork with any of it. Okay? I'm trying to get through some of these because I think I'm trying to just make sure that everybody, I hit the highlights on some of these. So determine how much time it would take for everybody to become dedicated to those tasks and make it really better. Okay? So one of the biggest things you always have to deal with any change is cost. How much is it going to cost? Because most companies don't like to spend a lot of what? They don't want to spend a lot of money. They want the money to go to the people in charge. They want to go to their investors. Time is a big component. Again, if you don't have time constraints, but at the same time, you don't want it taking too long. And then manpower. Having to hire people on just to get something done, it's always a pain. What's more expensive, though, is also to do what? Hire temps. You hire temps, what does it charge you? Anybody know? This is kind of what drives me nuts about Mercedes. It's the weirdest thing. They hire temps. Well, here's the funny thing about hiring temporary workers. You not only pay their salary or their hours, you also have to pay hours to the company that gave them to you. So basically, they get charged double for what you work. So let's say you're working, the current minimum wage is $7.50 an hour, I think. So basically, these companies are paying $15 an hour for one person that's only getting $7.50 of that. Think about that for a minute. That's ridiculous, isn't it? Especially when you know that you can always have somebody, but again, that also goes back to what does it cost to bring an employee in, to make a new employee. It can be quite the trade-off. All right, so before we go further, why don't we take a short break? So talking about the how to identify and how to create and how to know what to start with when it comes to lean. Well, the biggest thing is to start off by identifying the waste. What are the 8 wastes? This should be in your notes, guys. What are the 8 wastes? What are the 8 wastes of lean? What does it start with, first of all? What is the beginning of lean? Where do we have our first waste? The cycle doesn't start until you what? Doesn't start till you start off with overproduction. Why? Overproduction means that instead of pulling from our customers, we decided, oh, you don't need 200 shirts, you need 2,000 shirts. That's where the cycle starts. They didn't ask for those shirts. They didn't ask for that product. If you think about it in terms of you have a dinner going on, you and some of your friends have come together for dinner. There's only 6 of you. And you decide you want to make burgers. Overproduction. So instead of, well, I only need 6 burgers for 6 people, you make 8 burgers. Because, well, maybe somebody might be a little extra hungry. But you start by overproducing, right? That is where it starts. It's where it starts every time, is overproduction. That is the biggest key to this. Now then, once you've produced that hamburger, you've cooked it, it's ready, it's sitting on the table, but nobody eats it. So you've just got it sitting there. Then you have to transport it to the refrigerator. You have to go take it, you have to package it up, and you put it in the fridge for later. That is transporting. And going along with transporting is inventory. Inventory is going to be what always sinks your boat. Why? What does inventory tend to tie up? Tends to tie up money and resources. Think about it this way. How many businesses do you know that have a secondary warehouse just to hold all the inventory? All of them, right? But yet there's a lot of them that instead of having big warehouses full of inventory, They have found ways to get rid of all the inventory and only produce what the customer requests. You get rid of the overproduction, the whole cycle stops. But we've not done that. We have overproduced. We have 2 hamburgers left. So then we have to transport them and get them ready to go into our inventory. If you're talking warehouse time, that means that I now have to take a pallet jack or a forklift and go put this in inventory. I've got to go find a shelf for it, right? Ridiculous when you think about it that way, right? Because all I had to do was only make what I needed. Okay? So we've got overproduction, transportation, inventory, right? That hamburger sits in there for a few days, gets a little old, dried out. So that's now a what? It's a defect, right? If I want to eat that hamburger, I'm going to have to do some extra stuff to it, right? That would be extra processing, right? That's extra processing I'm going to have to do to fix the defect that has occurred because the burger dried out. Despite my best efforts, the burger dried out. Does that make sense? So now I've got to wait and warm this thing back up. And I'm going to be walking back and forth and trying to get everything ready to do this. And that's extra motion. And at the end of all of this, you have wasted your talent and you could have done something totally different. Made yourself a healthier meal. Right? Bit of a different way of looking at that. The 8 wastes are the killers. Okay? And it always starts the cycle with overproduction. Having too much that will never get used. Because here's the problem with overproduction. Let's look at Mercedes, for example. They overproduce all the time. They decide, here is our quota. It doesn't matter if they'll ever meet that quota of cars sold. They have a quota of cars to what? They have a quota of cars to make. They decide that they want, let's say, 1 million of, I don't know, what's a Mercedes car? The C-Class, thank you. Let's say they decide they want 1 million of the C-Class made down here in Birmingham. Does that mean that they're going to sell 1 million? No. They might never even see 1 million sold. Might only ever sell 500. Because the market itself. Because here's the thing, if the market isn't good, like right now, what's going to happen when the market totally crashes out? You're stuck with your money tied up in these cars that you cannot sell. So you overproduced. You've got to transport this sucker, right? You cannot just keep 1 million cars around. You've got to transport them somewhere. They've got to go have somewhere to live. Before COVID hit, did y'all ever go down to, y'all remember the little strip mall down here? The little outlet mall? If you ever went down there, that place was a parking lot full of cars waiting to be sold. That's before COVID hit. They moved all the cars out of then, and now it's a COVID testing place. Yeah, weird. They changed. So they overproduced. They had to transport it because it's got to go live somewhere until a dealership calls for it, right? That's transport. They have excess inventory because they can't get rid of these cars. That ties up their money. That ties up a lot of everything, right? So not only that, but then we notice that they've got a defect. We have overproduced these only to find a defect in them. I wouldn't doubt it. Because the whole thing about that is inventory, you have to have somebody to guard it. And if the person's not trustworthy enough to guard it, then you're going to end up with a lot of defects and a lot of damage on cars that cost enough to feed a family for 2 years. Think about that for a minute. So now you got defects, and what do you got to do for defects? You got to fix them. More processing, right? And how do you get it to processing? You've got to move the cars again. Extra motion. And your customer has to wait for you to fix the defects so that they can get their car. And there's your wait time. And your employees are dying of boredom from the stupid work that you have given them, when they could have found a different solution. The 8 wastes are the start. Okay? The 8 wastes are the start. In life and in work, the 8 wastes will come up, they will fight you, and they will strangle you. They're inevitable. Does that mean we don't fight them? Of course we fight them. We fight them all the time. We try and cut down on excess inventory. But does everybody? No, because there are always going to be people that are very opinionated about the fact that, yes, they need to have all this excess inventory. Why do you need excess inventory when you only have been told to make 5? Why are you making 8 burgers when you only need 6? Well, because someone might still be hungry. Well, because somebody might need it, or somebody might want it. How many cars go unsold on lots every year? Yeah. Do you know how much money that ties up for the people that own those car lots? It ties up a lot of their money, ties up a lot of their time, because they have to have people there to sell them, even if the car is not selling. How many times a year do you buy a car? It's not yearly. It's what? Maybe once a decade? If that. Most of us here, especially around here, tend to keep and fix our cars and keep them for at least a decade, right? I always laugh at the Subaru because they say, well, our cars are on the road for 10 years. Around here. Why is that funny? Well, because I have seen cars from the 1920s that zip up and down these interstates. Right? I see old trucks that look like they are on their last ever loving leg zipping up and down these interstates. Is 10 years really that much down here in Alabama? No. That's what I'm saying, is that we buy cars maybe once every 10 years or so. For the most part, a lot of us try and do what? You get a car, you're not liable to be one of those weirdo people that want to go constantly change cars every year like you change, your clothes. Which I've never understood that. I know people that have done that, and I seriously don't get it. We're not those type of people for the most part down here. For the most part down here, you get a car, you keep it for 10 to 15 years, and then once it dies a final death or it gets too expensive to continue to replace everything, or worse comes to worse, it is no longer, I'll put it to you this way. My mom had an old Nissan Maxima. Things ran great. It was a 2000, I want to say like a 2001, maybe. This car had been around a while. She's driving down to work one day and she gets caught in a car sandwich. She was in the middle. Had an SUV behind her that hit her, and there was a car in front of her that stopped all of a sudden, and the car behind her pushed her into the car in front of her. Funniest thing was, her car sustained the least amount of damage. The only problem was the exhaust. But because the car was so old, do you know what they did to her? They said, it's not worth fixing. They said, we're not going to put the money into it to fix this car. They totaled it out from under her. And she had to go buy a new car. The car was paid off. But the insurance company said, no, it's totaled, it's done. Only thing wrong with it, the exhaust pipe had gotten bent. The car was still drivable. She actually ended up driving it all the way to work that day and home. Same vein for mine. I had a '01 Dodge Neon. That one got to be a very old car. Only reason I decided I wasn't going to fix it anymore was because I looked up the value of it. The overall value was about $1,000. The overall work it needed was over $1,000. I'd already been rear-ended 3 times in that car. You know what I finally said? Enough's enough. It's not worth fixing. I've got enough money coming in that I could buy myself a better car. Those are the kind of decisions we make here. We don't need to buy a car every year. We don't want to buy a car every 5 years. We keep them till they die or they become so of such little value that it's just easier to let it go and get a new one, right? Yeah, the car was not even worth $1,000 and it was getting to the point where it needed a new transmission. It had like 150,000 miles on it, which on a Dodge Neon is a miracle. Seriously, Dodge Neon. It's a miracle on a Dodge Neon, okay? Just put it that way. So whenever you see all these car companies that are constantly pushing these cars out over and over and over again, having a million of one car that all it gets to do for most of its life is sit on the lot. That's kind of a problem, isn't it? That's why you have car companies like GMC that have always had a little bit of trouble and have to get bailed out like they did back whenever Obama first took over. Because you tie up all your money doing what you do means you don't have enough money to bail yourself out later, right? It all starts with the overproduction. It all starts with the wastes. Everything else is just a byproduct. Okay? It's a byproduct of a push mentality, not a pull mentality. Tax time. We've talked a little bit about this. This is basically the time it takes for something to be produced. Looking at plant layout and material flow. If you're talking cooking, it's how do you prep your kitchen to cook a major meal. Okay, let's talk about grill layout. Most people have the grill here and you've got a little table or something over here and over here. So you would take your meat and your tools on this side and slowly bring them over to the other side as everything cooks, right? Sound about right to y'all? It's all about flow and work sequences. Cycle times have become a big thing, especially it's a major thing in push mentality. It's also a part of pull mentality because cycle times are what? How fast did this go from raw material to finished product, and how long, what steps did it take in each process? Looking at quality issues. So again, you start looking at different products and you start going, well, what are some quality issues? There typically are more than a few. Looking at safety and ergonomics. Safety should always be the biggest one. If it ain't safe, it doesn't need to be done, right? That's putting back on your safety inspector hat. If it isn't safe, should it be done? No. Safety should always be the first thing considered. What are ergonomics? I know you've heard that word before because it used to be one of the biggest words used in retail in the early 2000s. This thing is ergonomically designed. This thing is designed with ergonomics in mind. Seriously, that was like the biggest buzzword in the 2000s. Never could figure that one out. But think about the big, thick floor mats most businesses now have for their employees to stand on. That's all about ergonomics, right? What does it do? Well, it keeps your, explain a little something about that, is the fact that standing on concrete over time actually has severe effects on your feet and your back, your body posture and everything. So the way that they have found that they can mitigate some of the effects of standing on concrete floors, because let's face it, what are most floors made of? Concrete. Concrete exactly comfortable to stand on? No. So now they've created ergonomic mats. You step on those ergonomic mats and they're supposed to create a cushion between you and that concrete. And it's supposed to improve your posture, because sitting hunched over a lot tends to be really bad for your posture. And they have the ability to keep your feet from tiring so badly. Because over time, you can actually end up flattening out your feet a lot, and that can cause a lot of issues with joints and stuff in your feet. That's all ergonomics. That's why chairs have been designed more and more with those curved backs like they have. It's all about the ergonomics. Is how are you supposed to be sitting? How do you support the spine? Right? So that is one of the biggest ones that we have to identify sometimes, is how do we protect ourselves? For example, I know for a fact a few years back, I was talking to a Mercedes employee, and he said, yeah, we keep getting in trouble, but we have to pull cardboard off the line to stand on sometimes. Why? Because our backs and our feet are killing us. And they won't give us ergonomic mats. They don't have them in some areas because those could actually cause things to gum up, or bad things can happen with that. But at the same time, they have to consider not only employee comfort, but they have to consider safety. If it doesn't pass safety, it doesn't need to pass for comfort, right? Just because it's comfortable to sleep in a hammock doesn't mean you're not going to get struck by lightning one day, right? You sleep all night in a hammock all night and day doesn't mean you're not going to get hit by the rain. So what's a more safety issue? Getting a good night's sleep in a hammock, or possibly getting killed by exposure and lightning, or getting eaten alive by blood-sucking mosquitoes that would carry you away because they got hungry. Okay, safety's always got to be the big first thing to look at. All right, so we're going to move on from this one. So one of the biggest things we have to start doing when we're doing any kind of lean is start looking for ways to create the solution. Again, this kind of goes back to y'all's assignment as to where are my wastes and how can I improve, right? What are some solutions? Look and think for those solutions. How are ways that I can create a standardized work, create a workflow environment? So going back to, you've got to make all these burgers. Maybe I need to keep, if I only have the grill, maybe I need to put in a couple of side tables so I can create a flow. Raw meat and materials and everything else on this side, finished product on this side, food surface here. So all I've got to do when I'm cooking is I've got to take the raw meat here, put it on the grill. Take the tongs from here, use it to flip the burger a couple times. Then I take the meat and put it over here where it's done. And it can rest and finish cooking. Right? Standardize work. Make a flow way for you to be able to do it efficiently in a comfortable manner. Does that make sense? Get input and make improvements. So maybe your best way isn't your best way. I thought that my best way would be to go buy these little bottles of Pepsi. Yeah, they're cheap that way. I just found out I can pay even less, get about 24 cans and a cup. Just as cheap, just as easy, only it doesn't take up as much room in my fridge. Different process, right? Different lens to look through. Documenting is always one of the big things in anything you do. Because if you don't document an improvement, do most people believe that it's actually an improvement? No. Right? I cannot tell you how many times I wish I took a before and after photo. Why? Because nobody believes me when I sit there and say, this is what it looked like before, this is what it looked like after. I actually refinished a desk all on my own. This thing had 2 layers of paint and varnish under it. I stripped it all back, sanded it all down, restained it, refinished it, all of it, and it finished it. Nobody believes I did it. They see the finished product, and it looks good. Doesn't matter, right? Documenting is always a good thing to do. Not to mention, documenting can also give you a good way to look whenever you're into sustain mode. It gives you a way to look at what you need to have versus what is going on now. You can start looking at it almost like a find puzzle. You know what I'm talking about? The find the object puzzles. So you can look at what you need to find versus what is there. And it becomes a game to you. Train on new methods, design and install visual management systems. And if you are, well, I won't even say that because it's not always just management approval you need. If it's you and you're working at home and you have a significant other, sometimes you need to talk stuff over with them, right? Because change does not just happen to you, it has to happen to them too at that point. Correct? Or if you're still living with your parents, if you do the change, you have to make it to where they do it too. That's man. Yeah. Put it this way. My mom kicked and screamed whenever I decided to sort out our knife drawer. It wasn't until she spilled a bunch of wine into it and had to do it all herself and drag it all out that she looked at me and went, "There's more in here than I thought." I said, "Yeah." You would let me get away with throwing away half of it away.